Fire Emblem. There are two things that people think of when they bring up that game series. The fact that it is now considered the best non-dating sim in recent years, and the fact that it's looking to be like Pokemon with two different versions, and an additional third one to expand upon the story. Well, you might think it feels like Pokemon, but I don't believe you have to worry about that. But I will say, we do have to worry about one thing: the state of the games. To me, Fire Emblem Fates will determine the fate of the franchise, and I don't mean to say that it will just die if we don't buy a lot of copies. Whether sequels will come out in the future or not isn't what I'm talking about. What I refer to is how the sequels are made, in terms of gameplay and story, for example. Basically, to put it one way, Fire Emblem Fates Conquest and Birthright will determine the future of the Fire Emblem games from here on out. When they say for you to choose your path, they mean more than just whether or not you'll side with Hoshido or Nor, choosing which character you want to marry, or which family you like more. I think that Nintendo has something much deeper in the works of these games. Now let's look at some history for Fire Emblem in the USA. After the release of Super Smash Bros. Melee, Nintendo fans were heavily interested in learning about Fire Emblem thanks to the characters Marth and Roy. The first game we got was Fire Emblem 7, or Fire Emblem Rekanoken in Japan. This game took place years before Roy was born, explaining the story of his father Eliwood and two other lords named Hector and Lindis. The game was a smashing success, with it being hailed as one of the greatest strategy RPGs ever made, selling over 331,000 units in the United States alone. But after that, the franchise never really picked up anything close to those numbers. Its first game in the West was its peak for both the West and the entire world. Path of Radiance, Ike's first game, only sold about less than half of that. And don't get me started on his sequel game, Radiant Dawn, which had poor sales and reception. Shadow Dragon isn't even talked about anymore, and Fire Emblem 12 never came to America, despite it being the real origin of the My Unit trend. That's right, Robin wasn't the real My Unit, Chris was, though they had limited class options like a mercenary or a mage. But if you want to get technical, the true original tactician in My Unit was actually Mark from Fire Emblem 7. I'm telling you, this game was that good. And fun fact for that fun fact, the Morgans in Fire Emblem Awakening are named Mark, with a C, in the Japanese version, after the original tactician. Back on subject, the franchise was in a do-or-die situation. And in Iwata Asks, it was revealed by devs that sales were horrible, and no one could figure out how to save it. Nintendo warned Intelligent Systems, the current developers of Fire Emblem, that if you don't sell over 250,000 copies, the franchise is done. To quote some of the things in there, "This is going to be the last one, so let's put in everything we want so we don't have any regrets." Then we had a big list of different things. I want to do this, and I want to do this, and the result was Awakening. To their surprise, though, the game sold well beyond anyone's expectations, completely shattering old records past games like Fire Emblem 7 had made, in both sales and reception, selling nearly 2 million copies in the whole world. The US was the biggest reason, however, with it spawning almost 900,000 copies here, while Japan barely got over the 500,000 copy hump. What were the praises, though? With how the battle formula felt completely revitalized, with dual support mechanics making it feel fresh and enjoyable again. The addition of casual mode, whether you love it or hate it, made it easier for newcomers to ease into the game and franchise. And here's the one that people know and love it for: the expansion upon the supports. Now, why sports have been so successful is a time and place for another day, but what I'm talking about today is how basically the marriage and children mechanics brought back from Fire Emblem 4 had made people fall for the characters and their personalities. While the franchise has always been known for its quirky cast and how losing them would break your heart, especially if you were attached to them, the stakes had never felt higher. To put it another way, this game basically lets you get your waifu/husbando loving on, as well as what if your own children were involved in the fighting too. Now, how does this relate to what I said earlier? To give one last detail, we must look at the state of the fandom. As things stand now, the fandom is split into two camps. Old Fire Emblem fans, who started with any game that came out before Awakening, and I'm not trying to sound elitist here despite Fire Emblem 7 being my first game. The other camp, I'll call them Neo-Fire Emblem fans, and these are the ones that have started with Awakening, loving it for the exciting gameplay, the self-insert style of protagonist, or just for their waifus, let's be honest here. the two mostly don't get along. Old Fire Emblem fans shame the other side for not wanting to try old ones because they're too hard, or you can't marry anyone there. If you've been around long enough, you've probably seen this. Think of the Shin Megami Tensei fandom going after Persona fans for not playing SMT. It's basically a form of elitism. And going off of recent events, some Neo Fire Emblem fans don't even want Fates anymore because it removed the petting feature from the My Room event. Okay, seriously guys? You're upset over this? I understand why Nintendo of America, who is basically the 4Kids of gaming, removed it due to considering how Western culture is. This could be viewed as creepy to some. They could make some uncomfortable. I mean, even Japan has never really been a touchy-feely type of group, but sometimes not even we are. Anyway, I know it sounds like I'm putting generalization and stereotypes into these groups, but there does ring some truth to them. Now then, what does all of this have to do with Conquest and Birthright? I'll tell you now. It's clear that the American audience is much more interested in Fire Emblem than the Japanese are, just by going off of the sales with Awakening. Whether that will still hold up or not, we'll have to wait and see upon the game's release. When most people saw how those games were described, it looked like an attempt to appeal to both sides. But we know they just can't do this forever. Fire Emblem has never been like Pokemon, where you can just release 2 games and an eventual 3rd game with it. So why does Nintendo want to do this? Is there some actual meaning to it, or could they just be doing it to cash in on the hype? While there's no real way of knowing, I can try to speculate. Let's look at what Nintendo has said to describe the differences between the 2 games. Now, I will not spoil anything about the games, so fear not about any of those. I'm going off of what has been said by both official trailers, ads, Nintendo Directs, and info presented in Nintendo sites and interviews in regards to the game. Let's start with Hoshido. It's very simple and straightforward. For both the Japanese and English descriptions, it's just a simple plot of standing up against Nor. Basically, beat the bad guys and you're the hero of the country. Also, it's structurally similar to Awakening. It has a world map enabling you to go off and grind, allowing yourself to get stronger if the enemies pose too much of a problem, or to let weaker units catch up to you. As for Nor, however, things aren't that simple. It's very much like the old style of Fire Emblem, and is always what it's been known for. There's only a finite number of EXP and gold to be had here. Basically, you have to pick what units you want and keep them forever. You have to structure a team that can handle anything and hope that they won't die. Unless you're playing in Phoenix or casual mode. Anyway, just like the old games too, there are more complex objectives that aren't so simple as defeating the enemy commander or just killing all the enemies on the map. For example, there's a mission that requires you to not let enemies cross a certain point in the map for a certain amount of turns. There are no doubt other types, but let's not risk spoiling everything for ourselves. Lastly, the story is complicated as well. Instead of just, oh, let's just defeat Hoshido and be done with it. No, it's much more different. For what Nintendo has stated, you have to change the nation from within. If you've watched Code Geass or played Tales of Vesperia, then it's basically the Suzaku Kururugi or Flynn Shifo mentality. As Nor is described in the Life of the Frontlines miniseries on the official Nintendo YouTube channel, Nor's royal family are descendants of the Dusk Dragon, and were left with the hunger for conquest, deeply entrenched in the barbaric wishes of their monarch. Kamui, who is no longer accepting of this mindset, must quietly go against the wishes of King Garen and rally his allies to adapt his mentality. While this is just speculation, perhaps the culture of Nor has been a negative one, and not only do you have to stop Hoshido from taking over, but you also have to change the mindsets of everyone at Nor, which, as if we've seen in our own human history, changing a negative mentality or mindset isn't something we can do in a single day. With all that said now, I can explain why I think the American audience will determine the fate of where the franchise will go from here on out. Under normal circumstances with RPGs in Japan, they tend to usually listen to the audience closest to them, the Japanese. But as I mentioned with how well our sales were in America with both Fire Emblem 7 and Awakening, that's 2 times now that we've helped the franchise peak. And in the second instance, we saved the franchise from dying. So, I think if there is some consistency, and if the West has more sales than Japan again, I think Nintendo will listen more to what America thinks of these games. America will be the one to tell Nintendo what exactly we prefer in the franchise. To put it bluntly, what would you rather have? deeper, more compelling stories, varying objectives, and challenging gameplay that makes you really think about your next move? The move your enemies make, and the move you make after that? Or would you rather have a simpler, but straight-to-the-point story with a more flexible difficulty? Instead of having to constantly fear about making a huge mistake, you can get stronger to adjust the level of challenge that you so desire. Neither is really wrong or right. It's all up to you. Fitting that this is coming out in election year. Go vote, by the way. But unlike voting, where all you need is having registered to vote, though it might take more depending on the state, you speak to Nintendo like you do any media group. They listen to money. You vote and speak with your money here. It costs about $40 to cast your vote. My theory, depending on a few variants, the sales, the receptions by critics, and opinions/criticism from fans alike, will help give Nintendo an idea of what to do when making the eventual Fire Emblem 15. Unless you're getting the special edition. Then you're just voting for both sides, and that doesn't help anyone but Nintendo's wallet. Speak with your money with what you want and don't want from Nintendo in regards to the future. They will listen. Now here's one question we won't know until it happens. Who will show up more? The old but extremely dedicated fan base that's been around since the first arrival of the series, that have seen the best and worst of what's been localized, or the loud, proud, and very active new fan base that has overwhelmed the RPG market with their numbers, that was responsible for giving the series new life? Now that will be something I can't wait to see the results to. Would you rather play the version that is more challenging and complex, or something more streamlined and adjustable? Neither of them are the right answer. It all comes down to preference. It's up to you to both challenge and choose where the fate of the franchise should go. Okay, this is off script now. Welcome to the end slate. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate that. Big shout out to Annabeth Ride, or my friend Brooke, for helping me make this. She put the video together, did all the editing. No doubt I got on her nerves so we can make the deadline, but hey, thank you, Brooke, for all the hard work. Put a smiley face if you actually read this far. But anyway, also a big shout out to Shadow of Chaos. I can't even remember the last three numbers because I think it's 775 or 725, I think. I don't remember. Anyway, big thanks to him for letting me use some of his footage from Fire Emblem Fates, from his first playthrough that he uploaded to his YouTube channel. I have a link in the description and probably an annotation too to his videos if you want to see. Like, you could check out his Japanese playthrough of Fire Emblem Awakening, and you might see some differences in the script and whatnot. But, you know, that's how localization works. Anyway, aside from that, if you agree with what I said, feel free to put it. Do you want to add stuff to my argument or my thesis? Go ahead. If you disagree, though, that's fine too. Feel free to say what you think. Maybe you think Nintendo's just cashing in on the hype. Or do you have some other reason why they're making 2 games instead of 1, or you think they're going to make this a continuous thing? I mean, this video is going to come out hopefully a couple of days before Fates comes out itself. So if not, then it'll come out on the day of. Either way, so there's no way of knowing for a while. So feel free to chime in, discuss with each other, or you can just discuss with me. I don't mind hearing what you guys say, though. If you are against my argument and want to put some counterpoints, go ahead, but just, you know, try not to sound like a dick about it. But anyway, yeah, thank you all for watching. I might make more like these. I don't know. I really want to, but it's just, I'm not sure what to talk about with people in the fandom, in respective fandoms and whatnot, haven't made on YouTube as well, or Twitter, or Tumblr, you know, people, or forums, like some stuff like that. But anyway, I don't know what I'll do with that. But hopefully I get to make another one of these like again. But it probably won't be about Fire Emblem next time, though. We'll see. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I will see you guys in another video.